Morning. A very warm welcome to everybody to the meeting of the Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sports. My name is Gillian Bosman. I'm the chairperson of this committee. Today we are going to be tabling the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, Vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sports. But before I start, we have a new member joining our committee. Member P. Harris is replacing Member Masuli Kama from the African National Congress. So a very warm welcome to you, member. Our procedural officer, Mr. Wasim Matthews, is just printing some of the documents for you to make sure that you've got that as well. But with that, I want to also welcome all the members here. Those members present, as well as the digitally savvy members online who could not make the trip to the legislature today. Also, a very warm welcome to Minister Andrew Murray and the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sports, one of our favorite departments in the government, and the only people we're sometimes very happy to see because they never come with bad news and they always come with good news. I'm going to ask that the members please introduce themselves. And we'll start with the members in the chambers, and then we'll go to the members online.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Officials, Gerrit Pretorius. I'm a member of the committee.
Morning, Deirdre Bartman.
Morning, Chair, and everyone else. Ashika Singh.
Morning, Chairperson Pamela Harris.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson. I'm online. I'm not a member of this particular committee, but I'm here.
Good morning, Chair. I am Ayanda Barnes. Good morning to the department as well.
Thank you very much. Can I check, are there any other members online?
Good morning, Chairperson, Honourable Minister. It's Rihanna Ghani, a Chairperson of Heritage Western Cape Council. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Ghani. I will now hand over to the Minister and the department to introduce themselves.
Good morning, goeiemôre. Honourable Marie, Minister vir Kultuursake en Sport. Thank you.
Morning, members. Guy Redman, Head of Department, Cultural Affairs and Sport. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Brenda Ratges, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, all. I'm Carol van Wyk, Chief Director, Cultural Affairs.
Good morning, Michael Janssen van Rensburg, Director for Museums, Heritage and Geographical Names, and also CEO of Heritage Western Cape.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Lyndon Bauer, Chief Director for Sport and Recreation.
Good morning, members. My name is Tabu Tutu, Director Sport Promotion.
Morning, everyone. Jackie Bull, Youth and After School.
Good Chairman, sorry.
Yes, Member Murray.
Just a correction. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I am a member of this committee. I apologize for saying I'm not a member. Sorry. I thought it's just sport. Thank you.
Don't worry, Member Murray. We know you're a member of the committee. So we're very happy to have you. We'll continue with the introductions.
Good morning, members. Danielle Manuel, responsible for sports development.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nomaza Dingayo, Director for Provincial Archives and Record Service.
Good morning, everyone. It's Cecilia Sani. I am the Director for Library Service.
Good morning, members. Luando Ndamo, Deputy Director, Management Accounting.
Good morning, members. I'm Themba Mkhunu, Director for Arts, Culture and Language Services.
Good morning, members. Sean Jury, Director, Strategic and Operational Management Support.
Good morning, Dion Burger. I'm in the Office of the Head of Department. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those introductions. I've received no apologies, Mr. Matthews. We've received no apologies, so no apologies are being tabled. And we also don't have any registered alternates, but we have a new member, and then we've got some other members joining us as well. Colleagues, as I said, we're here to consider Vote 13, the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sports. That vote is in the blue book. I'm trying to go to my page, sorry. Starting on page 673, it might be different, the pagination might be different on the digital version of the book, but on the printed estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, it's on page 673. We are also tabling at the same time the annual performance plan for the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sports, as well as the annual performance plans for the various entities. And I know that the reports for the entities were received via a link to the SharePoint site. So I don't think those were all printed, but they're all on that link. So that is for Heritage Western Cape. It's for the Western Cape Cultural Commission, as well as the Western Cape Language Commission as well. So what I'm going to do is we're going to I'm going to hand over to the Minister and ask the Minister to make opening remarks, but also just to remind everybody that meetings about appropriations are considered public hearings. So if we do have members of the public joining, I will make an allotted time for those members to also ask any questions if they want. And with Mr. Matthews' guidance, we'll figure out when is the most appropriate time to take a break, and we'll do that. But Minister, I'll now hand over to you for introductory remarks, and then after that, if the HOD would like to make any introductory remarks as well, please do that.
Good morning, Chairperson, members of the Standing Committee, and if there's from the public, and if there's from the media as well, and then special welcome to our Chairperson of our Heritage Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you on Vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sport in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill 2024. Today we table the last APP of the Strategic Plan 2019 to 2025, facing a national economic slowdown and unprecedented fiscal constraints. As communities recover from the social impacts of COVID-19, mental and physical well-being will be key enablers. The work that DCAS does is upstream in nature in that it prevents problems before they happen, or alternatively, it systematically reduces harm caused by those problems. We continue on our journey to prioritize social cohesion by creating a shared future and a sense of belonging, youth and mental well-being by giving youth a sense of purpose and pathways to become productive residents, and lastly, new operating models to leverage new ways of working. In order to ensure fiscal sustainability and manage the impacts of the public wage agreement, we have implemented measures of fiscal consolidation and reduction across the 2024 MTEF. Given the continued fiscal uncertainty over the medium term, we have adapted a forward-looking fiscal strategy leveraging alternative delivery models, including blended financing, to ensure that our ecosystem of partners remain resilient as we prepare for future economic scenarios. Chairperson, as you know, 49% of our budget is towards library services, and in line with our forward-looking fiscal strategy, DCAS hosted a two-day think tank conference on 6 and 7 February 2024 with industry experts towards the development of a sustainable public library service delivery model. The conference was facilitated by the University of Cape Town Hasso Platinum Design School, who will be assisting the department with finalization of a new service delivery model. The role of public libraries has long shifted from facilities mainly focused on lending books to the public to also become vibrant spaces for community arts, community hubs that facilitate cultural awareness and understanding and provide access to local and community information, e-governance, primary and general health information, and educational opportunities. Chairperson, the challenges in our sectors over the last 5 years have been unprecedented, and DCAS will continue to prioritize sport, arts and culture events, as these events provide platforms for athletes and artists to grow and at the same time serve as opportunities to foster social cohesion and social inclusion, which are prerequisites for economic growth. Thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to providing clarity where it is required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to the Chairperson, to the Minister and members of the Standing Committee, and thank you for the opportunity as well to brief you on the vote 13. The APP that we are tabling today, as well as the APPs of the entities, acknowledges the economic fiscal challenges which have emphasized more than ever before the importance of a sustainable approach to service delivery. The department's efforts will be concentrated on constitutional mandates, activities that promote social cohesion, youth and mental well-being, to support youth development and pathways for success. The year-on-year budget increased from an adjusted appropriation of 888,290,000 in 23-24 financial year to a final appropriation of 903,338 in the 24-25 financial year, resulting in a net increase of 15 million, mainly due to inflationary increases. Apart from the inflationary increases, the department did not receive additional funding. While the year-on-year analysis of our budget reflects an increase, the 2024 MTF decreased by 10.7 million for 24-25, 10.6 million for 25-26, and 11.8 million for 26-27 due to fiscal consolidation. In addition, once-off funding for the EPWP expansion, which we received last year, and artists in schools, EPWP expansion of 7 million and artists in schools of 2 million, received in 23-24 financial year, was not reallocated in 24-25. The department also had to absorb the cost of living adjustment in its baseline allocation over the 2024 MTF because of the impact of the salary increase was not funded by Provincial Treasury. Salary increases absorbed include the carry-through effects of the 23-24 salary increase of 7.5%, as well as the 24-25 salary increase of 4.9%, which is an inflationary increase. The fiscal consolidation, together with the impact of the salary increases, negatively affected the department's budget intended for services, and most affected are transfers to our ecosystem of partners in the non-profit organization space, which decreased by 12.39%. To minimize the impact of the fiscal consolidation and the impact on the cost of living adjustments, the department had to unfund 22 posts across the department. Regardless of the declining fiscal and economic environments, we ensure that our 2024 MTF budget continues to prioritize the recovery of our sectors by aligning it to the Western Cape Recovery Plan in areas of jobs, safety, and well-being. We also ensure that basic service outcomes are protected despite our declining budget. To this end, the department's service delivery strategy will be executed by leveraging the whole of society through the managed network model, partnering with NGOs, with the other spheres of government, the private sector, the school governing bodies, parents and unemployed youth to address social and economic challenges. Chairperson, the APP for DCAS is tabled with errata. There is a loose page at the beginning and the errata are covered there. But also on page 85, one that we missed was indicated 3.3.1. In the year 25-26, the number should be 21, not 221. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much to both the Minister and the HOD. I'm just checking, Ms. Ghani, as the Chairperson of Heritage Western Cape, would you like to make any opening remarks on your APP?
No, sir, nothing from my side. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Members, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to ask members if you have any specific questions on the introductory remarks, any questions of clarity, please let me know now.
Okay.
Member Marais, I see Member Barnes, and then I see you. I would also just like to welcome, just before we go, I think I see Ms. Lentz from the Language Committee online. Ms. Lentz, are there any introductory remarks that you'd like to make as well?
Good morning, everybody. No opening remarks from me. Thank you.
Perfect, and a very warm welcome to you. So we'll go with the first round of questions. And then Member Murray online. Over to you, members. Akbar Barnes. Okay, terwyl ons wag vir die Akbar Barnes, Akbar Murray.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair. I am more interested in the challenges facing our youth, especially in education. Now, I've mentioned already before in this committee that we should find ways of introducing maths to Black youths, colored youths, so the standards can improve. It's no use they pass well in history and geography subjects and they cannot understand maths in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And I said that maybe we should have teachers presenting classes and that being videoed and then placed in libraries so that students can read or see it over and over and over at home, because it's online, the teacher's lessons she taught. They don't understand algebra. I know I used to struggle with algebra and trigonometry in matric when I was still in school. That was many years ago. How much more now with all the new developments? So that's my first question. To what extent have we entered the fourth industrial revolution in terms of our teaching methodology? And in the light of economic and fiscal challenges where our budgets are cut more and more, what innovative measures has been taken to improve or to maintain educational standards? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Murray, for those two questions. Member Barnes, are you able to hear us?
Yes, thank you, Voorzitter. Chairperson, just a quick one. Noting from the overview, when the HOD and the MEC were speaking, they were speaking mostly on decreases for 2024 due to fiscal consolidation and also a 12% decrease on the non-profit sector. Chair, one cannot help yourself but to wonder, does the department make any investments to address social ills affecting the youth, particularly the youth involved in crime and gangs, and also on drugs? Do we have performance targets for these interventions in the APP? Most interventions of the department, like the MOD and after-school program, are targeted at youth, Chair. Does the department have a specific intervention targeted at our school youth and the NEET program? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands for that first round, so I will now hand over to the Minister and the HOD.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will answer a bit of it and then my colleagues will cover the rest. On the education methodologies, I will park that question for my colleague, Mr. Brent Walters, will be able to answer that quite ably and cover more comprehensively all the various interventions that we have made to ensure that our education and our ways of teaching are in line with opportunities presented by 4IRs. In terms of reading, I'm going to ask Jackie to talk through to the at-home learning and other programs that we have to support learners with additional opportunities, including the work that we are doing in the libraries with the Year Beyond, and also to cover the youth interventions. The bulk of our youth interventions, Chairperson, are preventative in nature. So when you see huge numbers of learners in our programs, what members must appreciate that is huge numbers of learners not being exposed to drugs and various social ills. The intention is that we need to outcompete all the other competing, what would you call them? Let's call them social ills, competing social ills that our youth are constantly being made to make decisions on a daily basis. The less opportunities we have for positive alternatives, the higher the likelihood of youth going into these dangerous spaces and exposing themselves to drugs, etc. So the bulk of our work is preventative in nature. Difficult to measure something that didn't happen. Difficult to say because of DCAS, this child is not on drugs. But we say that because if a child is in the mod center straight from school and goes home after the work of the mod center, get home where mom is back from or dad is back from work, that child has had a protective factor implemented on their life after school. Learners who do not have exposure to protective factors suffer more because they then become at risk to other things within communities that may cause them to dabble in drugs and other social ills. So the bulk of our work is preventative in nature, whether it's learners involved in clubs or various sporting activities or arts activities, especially choirs. We are growing our work in choirs because choirs have the capacity to have higher participation. So it's not like individual endeavors. It's like 30 children, 60 children at the same time, every day, every afternoon, participating in choir practice, and as a result of that, are exposed to positive factors as opposed to negative factors. So I'm going to ask Ms. Bull to just cover a little bit more on that and also cover the first ones to talk about the at-home learning, the parts that DCAS is responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HOD. So I think 4 things to mention. The first is that within the 100,000 young people that we work with, there is specific targeting of youth with higher levels of risk that takes place. And that happens in 3 ways. The first is that learners with very high levels of absenteeism or behavioral challenges are identified by the school, and the youth on Year Beyond are given 12 learners that they are responsible for, and they start early in the morning walking them to school with a walking bus, and then they support them after school with homework and with different activities to keep them safe. So these are children who in primary school who have been identified by the schooling system with very high levels of risk. The second is the after school program that focuses on literacy and numeracy, and that is for learners who are getting less than 50% in language or in mathematics. And it's a catch-up program for grade 3 and 4 learners to bring them up to the right level for their grade. And there is global evidence and South African evidence that a learner who isn't at the right level by grade 4 is likely to drop out of school before grade 10. So we want to stop that grade 10 dropout by bringing them up to their grade level with a catch-up program focused on literacy and numeracy and building the strong foundations on literacy and numeracy. The third program is our Planet Youth program in the George area, and that focuses specifically on looking at risk-taking behaviors amongst grade 8 and 9 learners. And it does a survey every 2 years of all the learners anonymously to look at what the risk-taking behaviors are, and then tries to look at what are possible diversion activities that young people can get involved in positive peer networks and not just in the antisocial behavior. And then the last is the broader thing of across the board, whether it's in libraries or in schools or in community hubs and Tusong centers, offering young people who are engaging our youth in building a culture of reading, because we know that that stimulates their imagination and the sense of possibility and builds hopes and dreams. And we know that young people with dreams are less likely to engage in antisocial behavior because they're following a path. And that happens with over 40,000 young children, and the 3,000 youth who are part of the program do that. So I think in terms of the different programs working with children, and then at the same time, because it's a dual benefit program, the young people themselves who are all NEETs and would be part of the element in communities of young people who are starting to get disillusioned and lose hope, and with that start feeling restless. We're engaging those 3,000 young people in building up their work readiness skills and preparing them to enter the world of work or study. And while they're on the program, we're building those skills with the intention that they exit into their next opportunity at the end of the program within 3 months of completing it. And every year there are 3,000 young people who are taken through that program in the Western Cape. And of that, anything between 75 and 80% of them progress into the next opportunity within that 3 months. Thanks very much, HOD.
And then, Chair, we also have in our libraries the education portal. It's resources that are on all the computers that are in our libraries to assist our learners with homework support. And also in the arts and culture space, we also have online teaching in dance, which is then published to all the community art centers to make sure that they have exposures to some of the best choreographers, but without them having to visit every center. So there are modern ways that we are adopting to increase our reach, both within the education space, but also in the arts culture space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Murray, I see your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I'm very interested now. I'm encouraged by the concentration of the discussions on the plight of the youth. Now, I know that this committee might say this is not our business, but I want to make it their business. The Education Department has been approached by me about transport of children over a distance of about 10, 12 kilometers, and the parents cannot afford the high cost of transport. Here in Durbanville, there's a little coloured township in Durbanville, Morning Star, but they must go to school in Visantekraal, long distance from there, and that is the Visantekraal High School and the Aquila High School. And they can't get to school. They got to walk all that distance. What can you do to put pressure on the Minister of Education, if you're concerned with the youth, to make provision for transport for these children, coloured children and black children, from Morning Star to Visantekraal, which is quite a distance away? And parents said to me they cannot afford the taxi fare daily to transport their children over that distance. Is this something you're prepared to look at? I don't expect you to say what you're going to do now, because obviously the budget is finished. I want to know what is your vested interest in this issue. If you are very concerned about the youth and the rehabilitation of our youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Murray. Member Murray, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the Standing Committee on Education will be online and in the chambers as well. So maybe that question can be posed to Minister David Mainir and the HOD, the former HOD of Cultural Affairs and Sports, Mr. Brent Walters, to answer that question. But I also see the chairperson of the Standing Committee of Education, Ms. Deirdre Baartman, is sitting here as well. So perhaps Member Baartman can note that question and ask that question tomorrow in the Education Committee meeting as well, because that falls under their functional area. No, you can do that tomorrow. All questions today is cultural affairs and sports related. Members, are there any other questions based on the opening remarks? I see no hands, so we will now go into the main budget book. So I'm going to table the entire vote 13 for cultural affairs and sports, as well as the annual performance plan for the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sports, as well as the annual performance plan for Heritage Western Cape, the Western Cape Language Commission, as well as the Western Cape Cultural Commission. So if you can please indicate which report your question is related to. It will be helpful if you have a page number, but if it's a general question, the HOD has all of those printed and on his desk. He came very prepared for all those questions. So members, I'm now going to take a round of hands and ask, are there any questions for the first round? I see member Kasim, member Pretorius, and then member Bartman.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll just start with two questions for now. On page 674 of the budget estimates under demands and changes in services, specifically in paragraph 4, the department states that it will continue to partner with municipalities in order to enhance public library services. Now, in the past 5 years alone, there has been reports of vandalism and robberies at different libraries across the province. And if we look in the media, it even states there that over 300 libraries in the province has been vandalized. For that specific period, like I just mentioned, as stated in the media, over 300 libraries has been vandalized, while libraries are estimated to be more than 100. Now, in that process, the total loss when it comes to monetary terms is estimated to be more than 27 million, if I'm correct. So I've got two questions for this one specifically. With this in mind, what is the department doing in partnership with these municipalities to make sure that there's proper tight security in these libraries in order to make sure that millions of rands are not lost, fixing these libraries in order to make sure that communities also have access to proper service delivery in a form of accessing well-functioning and safe libraries? And then secondly, on page 677 to page 679, these pages makes a reference to the issue of internet and access to Wi-Fi connectivity in libraries, among other things. Can I ask how many libraries in this province have access to Wi-Fi? And those who do not have, what is the purpose of them not having Wi-Fi? I'll leave it with those two questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, is it okay if I ask 3 questions now and more later?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, HOD. I noted that the Minister in her introductory remarks referred to the fact that 49% of the budget goes to libraries, if I'm correct. I want to come to museums. Maybe we have covered this ground before, I can't remember, in previous meetings and previous budget meetings. The expenditure on museums, in terms of it being value for money, has it ever been necessary to consider closing a museum because of a lack of funds or a lack of justification for allocating or spending funds on a museum? If so, where are those? Then I see that on page, let me just see here quickly. As far as heritage is concerned, if I read it correctly on page 699, Heritage Western Cape, the budget cut there was 69.15%. I also note that there seems to be a cycle in previous years and also in the outer years in the allocation of funds. So for instance, next year, it will actually go up considerably from 500 million to 870, and the year after that, even more so. So if you can just, clarify that as to, is there a cycle and why is it done like that? Especially in terms of what they do as indicated on page 688. And then for this round, a last one on the question of employee compensation, which has actually increased overall, it seems to me here, also on page at the top of page 699 by 11.72%. Yet, if you look on page 713, it would appear that there's been very few new appointments. And those appointments were actually in the lower ranks, if I'm not mistaken. How come this increase of 11.72%? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Partman.
Thank you, Chairperson. My first question is on page 696. It relates to, sorry, the social sector expanded public works program. I know there's been a cut and the HOD quickly mentioned the program and how many people it's affected. So if I can just get a repeat of that, I don't want to hold the meeting up in that regard. And then on page 684, regarding the sport contribution of approximately 8.8 billion rand in terms of Western Cape GDP since 2012. I know on one of the pages there's some money allocated for the Grand Prix coming back to Cape Town. And I just want to find out in terms of the total amount of events that are planned or known for this next financial year. Is there an estimate in terms of the possible GDP it will be contributing to the Western Cape for the next financial year? And if not, writing is also fine. And the EPRI number was for 711. That was the page number that it related to. And then my last question relates to my constituency, as always. On page 734, in the Central Karoo, I read in the infrastructure book, sorry, that Langsburg is getting money for the Vleyland Modular Library. I only know of one library there in Vleyland. It's really adorable and maintained by the Provincial department. I've been there recently. And then there's 1.5 to Beaufort for the upgrade of the library. But also in the main budget book, it speaks to the rebuilding of the library that was on fire. So now I don't know if it's a new library or rebuilding the one that burned down. And then 250,000 to Prince Albert for the Tusong Centre Library. So for the Central Karoo amounts, those come to approximately 2.75. And I just want to check because in the infrastructure section, it speaks to the stage 1 of the initiation and pre-visibility. So are you transferring the money to the municipality to do the work? What exactly is being done? Is it extensions? Is it new libraries? Or will DCAS be doing the work? I just want to show department or person doing the work and how is the money transfer going to happen, because as you do know, in that area not everyone gets a clean audit. So my biggest concern is how money will be spent and ensuring that the money that is being allocated for these libraries or upgrades or services don't get absorbed into other operational expenditure in the municipality in order to do things that you're not supposed to do instead of building the libraries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go with that round and then we'll come back for the next one.
Thank you, Chair. A number of colleagues are going to answer, but we will start with Cecilia. We will answer Member Kasim's questions, and Michael will answer the heritage and the museum related questions. CFO will cover the COE costs related questions, and if you want to cover some of the infrastructure transfers once you can, but then Dr. Bower will cover the sport events as well as the sports infrastructure. And Cecilia will also cover the measures that we have in place to ensure that municipalities spend infrastructure funds appropriately. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Yes, so for the security question, what we do is that we transfer the funds to the municipalities for the operation and the maintenance of libraries. So from those funds, they do secure an amount for security. Unfortunately, yes, vandalism has been taking place. So we are working with municipalities to try and ensure that they improve on their security measures. When we build a library, we also build it in a way that it's kind of preventative of windows breaking or anything. So we'll put like windows on the top to make the light coming from high to try and prevent any windows being broken. But we do work very closely with the municipalities in this regard, and they do give us their indication of security funding that they do need in their business plans. We have 232 rural public libraries that are on our Rural Library Connectivity Project. So that means it's free internet at the public libraries. And at Metro, there's 104 of the Metro libraries that provide free internet access. The Wi-Fi is given through the broadband project. So we have Wi-Fi that is usually at a library that is externally focused. So the community around the use the Wi-Fi. It's part of the Western Cape Broadband Project. We also have Wi-Fi inside the library. There are 209 sites across the province with Wi-Fi sites. With regards, I'll just move on to the building projects. So yes, so for this year, we have identified the Central Karoo area because they haven't received funding for a while in infrastructure. So the Vleyland is a farming community that we're giving a R1 million to, and it's currently, there's the library housed in a church hall, and we're giving them a big modular. The Prince Albert to Song is just so that we can update it so that the kids don't have to walk to the Prince Albert main library, which is 3 kilometers away. And by expanding the Prince Albert to Song library, we're giving them more space for working. And we're also expanding KwaMo'ntle Nkosi library, and we've given Green Valley Library for library roofing. It's for their roof to be replaced. The way it happens is we transfer funds to the municipalities. They put out the tender and they manage the building. They have to report on their expenditure monthly, and we have monitoring visits with them. They cannot use that funding for anything else because it is an earmarked conditional grant that comes to them, and they have to report on that funding. We work very closely with them to make sure that they spend it on time, and we've been very successful in our infrastructure projects, so it seems to be working the way that we work with that. I think that is my questions. The future for? Yes, so we are, the broadband 2.0 is coming implemented next year. We're working closely with CEI. Through that project, we are able to connect a whole lot of other libraries which previously did not have infrastructure in the towns to facilitate internet access. So we're slowly ensuring that all our libraries are connected. There are some where there just isn't infrastructure in the town that we're struggling with, that we try and connect through Telkom, LTE devices and things like that. And then there are those that there is no space, that some of the libraries don't yet have space for computers, and those will be connected hopefully once they're upgraded in the future for space for computers. So it is a long-term program.
Thank you, HOD. I'll cover the two questions, the first one on museums and the second one on Heritage Western Cape. I think the question that a member asked about the museums and value for money is a very relevant question, and it's something that we've very seriously considered and consulted in the last 12 to 24 months in the department and with our affiliated museums and stakeholders. But it's not a very easy question. Because the value that you place on a museum is essentially the value that you place on its collections, its exhibitions, its educational programs, and the role that that plays in the community. There is an argument to be made from an economic point of view and from a tourism point of view regarding the relevance of a museum and its ability to generate its own revenue, so its sustainability. And if you come at the question from that aspect, we've looked at some of our museums which have low visitor numbers. As part of the conversation, we've developed what we call Museums, Archives and Libraries Steercom, or we call it a MAL Steercom because it is a little bit of a crazy idea where we're looking at different management models for running museums, archives, and libraries, and potentially other stakeholders like arts facilities and even other government services within multi-purpose facilities. We've identified a couple of case studies up to now where, for example, the museums and libraries are adjacent to one another. These are in George, for example. These are in Lwandle, in Mariatsburg, and potentially in Porterville. And we are busy developing case studies for a joint management model for these facilities. What that will help us with is to reduce the cost of running the museums and libraries and archive services together, especially in these rural communities, but at the same time retaining those services, because you must acknowledge that at some point in time, the museum was declared a local province-aided or provincial museum because the community there found the heritage in that town or that museum to be significant to them. And the argument then becomes, well, if the visitor figures are low now, maybe the current community, is not finding or seeing the significance in that institution. But that doesn't mean that there is no significance, and doesn't mean that that can't be revived at some point. So therefore, we're rather going the route of looking at alternative management models where we can share resources amongst institutions. We don't want to use the word closure of museums because that brings a lot of alarm bells to community members. But what we have looked at is alternative arrangements where, for example, a museum has low visitor figures, to say, well, let's open by appointment only, or let's make it open only certain days of the week, and then the same staff can then go and assist at another close by facility. Those type of museums that we've identified are situated in Caledon, Greenpoint, Robertson, and potentially in Paarl, not the Toll Museum, but the Paarl Museum. But at this point, nothing has yet been decided. It all goes through consultation processes, and it's very much important that this isn't a top-down approach, that it's a bottom-up approach, that we consult the museums, the communities, and the stakeholders in order to get their buy-in, especially when we're looking at the running of multi-facility complexes, because if we don't get the buy-in from the ground up, the concept won't work. So a long-winded way to answer your question, member, is that yes, we have considered it, we're looking into it, and we have an active steer comm that's driving the investigation in that direction. On the Heritage Western Cape question, so the budget cut was necessitated by the reprioritization of the DCAS budget due to the fiscal constraints. We were given basically 3 scenarios by Treasury, scenario 1, 2, and 3 of different degrees that we had to cut. And it comes down to a situation of trade-offs within the department of how to spread the budget. One of the areas where we've looked at was Heritage Western Cape. Heritage Western Cape Council has recently revised its application fee structure that will generate additional revenue for the entity as it continues on the road to becoming a little bit more self-sustainable because the department is the biggest funder of the entity. Secondly, we've also looked at the entity's investment accounts. The entity has an investment account in order to cover legal liabilities, and the department has over the years funded that account, and that account has also grown in terms of interest. And we've had fewer and fewer legal cases where we've had this legal liability. Currently, we only have one pending, which is only going to be about 10% of that fund. And that means that the entity has some room to utilize its investment funding in the coming year. It is envisaged, though, that in the outer years, because you've asked about cycles, in the outer years, that if needed, the department would increase its support again in terms of the finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, I will address the question of the events. So in the Western Cape, the events is a very important part of the sport and recreation pipeline. In fact, from the National Sport and Recreation Plan, it's strategic objective 8, in which we will be promoting local and domestic competitions, and then also some of the international competitions. There are close to 74 active sporting codes that are affiliated to SASCOC, the South African Olympic Committee, and most of those 74 codes of sport is in fact active within the Western Cape. In this current financial year, our target was 100, and we probably now at 115 that we've exceeded the target by. And then next year, because of the budget decrease, our target is actually at 80 that will be held. What we also do is, as part of the event space, we in fact engage with the federations, and we normally have meetings with them, funding workshops around about June to July each year. And in between July the 1st and 31st September, federations are invited to apply for events for the following financial year. Now, each financial year will differ from one to another in terms of the economic output for that particular year. So remember, just to give you an example, in 2023, the year started off in January with Mzansi T20 South African League. That was the first edition. So that started. Immediately, that was followed by the Women's Cricket World Cup, which ended in March, in which England beat South Africa there. Then that continued with the Two Oceans Marathon, and then you had the Netball World Cup, which took place in August. Just as the Netball World Cup ended, the Rugby Sevens World Cup took place in September in last year. So one can see that a number of World Cups was held in one calendar year, 2023, together with these big ones. Next year, that's coming from 1 April, there are not so many World Cups that's in fact happening. And in fact, next sort of financial year will be 26-27, when the World Mountain Bike Championships will be held in the Western Cape, as well as the Cricket T50 World Cup. So in that particular year, there would be again an increase in a spike in terms of the World Cups that is coming to the Western Cape. Our normal events will continue, and as you would have seen this weekend, we had the cycle tour. The Western Cape was well represented there, and we're one of the sponsors of the event. And then as we get to last weekend and this weekend, we're having huge athletic championships that is taking place primary and high school, with in fact the South African primary and high schools championship taking place at Dal Yusufat Stadium between the 3rd and the 6th of April. That in fact kicks us off with our event space. So just that will have close to 3,000 participants, because there are about 320 athletes per province that will travel down during the school holidays. That will be followed by the Two Oceans, and the Two Oceans nowadays is in fact over 2 days and not 1 day any longer, because they have the 21K and the other shorter distances on the Saturday, and then the 56 will take place on the Sunday, the 14th of April. So one of the things that has assisted the Western Cape is that most of the federations have good governance within their structures, and that they are able to get support from municipalities, province, and in many cases in the City of Cape Town. City of Cape Town hosts about 50% of the events. Then we also, Member Bartman, have a number of municipalities that have also taken eventing to heart. So if you look at the Eden area, you'll see the Knysna Oyster Festival still continues in a form with the sport. You also have Bito that has started with their Easter tournament. You have in George, you have the agricultural show, which is an agricultural and sport show that happens. And then you also have in Mossel Bay, they've started last year with the Mossel Bay Arts Festival, but they've also since 2012 had a sport festival, and which happens in September each year. And they are now currently on 28 events that happen within their sport festival. And as you go through to the other areas of the Western Cape, you will find lots of sevens tournaments happening in the West Coast, whether it be in Saldanha, whether it be in Darling and other places. But sport is seen as a great motivator and part of the social cohesion. The EP took place last year, and we are currently in discussions waiting for the new date to be announced for when the next EP will take place as well. So that discussion is happening at the moment. And then we are also have an application process for infrastructure for municipalities. Budget is very small. It's about 1.6 million where they apply to us, but the bigger application is actually to COCTA, where COCTA has got funding available for infrastructure, but that is handled by the Department of Local Government. We only have the equitable share, which is, that, as I said, a smallish contribution in terms of the big amounts that they actually ask for and need. So in terms of the 8.8, that is a case study that was done between the University of the Western Cape and the Bureau for Economic Research at Stellenbosch. And it's a longitudinal study, Chair. And the third report of the case for sport will come out later this year because the last one that was done was 2018. And the longitudinal study will end in this particular financial year with the final report from UWC that will in fact peg what our sport and infrastructure. We're recovering from COVID-19, and then also what we also have to realize is we're also actually recovering from the drought that took place in 2017-18. That also had an effect on sport. And then, of course, 2 years later, that was followed by COVID. So we've slowly started to recover and to regain some of the lost ground. But many of the sport events have indicated they did take a dip, and they are actually at pre-COVID levels where they were. So they're probably about 4 to 5 years behind where their normal trajectory would have been as well. So, Chair, I rest now. Thank you.
Thank you, HUD. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member. The question on the EPWPs and how many are we going to lose. So basically, the department supported about 506 EPWPs throughout last year, inclusive of the 7 million that we've received. They are placed at museums, libraries, archives, and in the arts. So we've far at length tried to stabilize the EPWPs in terms of they are essential contributions to our museums and to our libraries, our archives, and to the arts. However, due to the budget cuts in arts and culture, we are going to lose 36. They've been appointed on a year process, on a year contract. And then within libraries, there are 17 EPWPs that we are losing. But as far as wide within the museum space and within the archive space, we have found funding to absorb the rest. So in actual fact, it is about 76 that we are losing. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. So the question around the COE increase of 11%, there are basically two reasons. The first one is in October last year, we received a guideline from DPSA, which required all vacant funded posts to be submitted to the Premier for concurrence. So that obviously delayed the process. So we have received approval. In fact, we had 2 rounds thus far. And to date, we have received approvals for certain of the posts. So all of those posts are now included in next financial year for the filling thereof. So that's the one reason. The other reason is obviously the impact of the wage increase. So we had to absorb, so it includes the 7.5%, which is the carry-through effect from the current financial year to next financial year. And then for next financial year, we had to also increase our COE by the 4.9% salary increase. So at this point, there is no agreement in terms of what the percentage increase is going to be for next year's salary increase, but we were required to include it at the level of inflation, which is the 4.9% basically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jansen van Rensburg. I'm reminded when you talked about closing museums and visitor numbers, I'm reminded about a year ago, there was a heated debate in Cape Town on radio stations around the closing of 2 libraries, Plumstead and Durbanville. And I made a joke yesterday with my co-member Patricia van der Ras, saying that because of that public debate, those libraries are still open and their visitor numbers have increased. So perhaps it's a conversation you want to have in public about the threat of closure, because that might force people to go to those museums and use them. With that said, I just want to ask a follow-up question in terms of the, was it the MAL Steercom? To what extent are you looking at repurposing spaces in museums and libraries as well? Sort of in most of my travels around the world, I've seen most museums have a gift shop and a coffee shop and a place for people to gather. Most libraries have a coffee shop and a place for people to gather. I think in Cape Town, the only library that I've been to with a coffee shop is the library in Tukai, where you can get a cup of coffee and you can get a pie. And it's the best place to eat because it's good food and you're sitting in a garden and you can read. So to what extent are we looking at adding that element and perhaps a strategic partnership with the Department of Economic Opportunities and the Department of Agriculture so that community food gardens and entrepreneurs in the hospitality space can occupy that and sort of draw people into spaces? And then also, I don't know how to say this, but the issue of the content of the exhibits in museums. To what extent are we looking at updating that with participation of those communities? I've been to the George Museum quite a few times, and I'm astounded by how I don't feel that the museum reflects accurately the history of George. And when you speak to the people of George, they say, well, my sort of history is only confined to one room. And there's a massive section that deals with the printing press in Georgia and the paper industry, but it doesn't really deal with the other aspects of people's history. So to what extent are we also engaging on a regular basis every 5 years, the community, to find out sort of what actually do they want in the museum? Because I think globally, and we've got a very good example in Cape Town with the Jewish Museum as well as the District 6 Museum, where the exhibits are developed and produced by community members. It's more a living museum than it is sort of just showcasing exhibits. And then I've got another question, which I'm also not sure whether I should ask, and the minister might have to just tell me here whether I can't ask this because I understand that the minister is the appeal authority. But on the issue of declaring provincial heritage sites, and I'm specifically looking at the Athlone Power Station, when a decision like that is made, whose responsibility is it then to maintain and to manage that site? Because as soon as you declare it as a provincial heritage site, there's an expectation from the community that that heritage asset is going to be available, whether it's for tours or whether it is for a museum. So who manages that? Is it the asset owner, or is that something that Heritage Western Cape takes over? And sort of how does that get decided? So those are my follow-ups. I'm not sure if the members have any follow-ups to their questions. I see Member Bartman, Member Kasim, I was about to say Member Barnes, Member Kasim, and then Member Harris. Member Bartman?
Are you ignoring me, Chairman? My hand has been up for a year.
For a whole year? We've only been here since 9 o'clock, so sorry, I didn't see your hand, Member Murray. I will note you after Member Harris. So we'll go Bartman, Kasim, Harris, and then Murray.
Thank you. Just some clarification questions. I'm not sure if I got everything. At the Beaufort West one, 734, page 734 obviously speaks to the roof to be replaced, but on page 708, there's the 4 million for the regional library services, that the separate for the burning of the library to be fixed, the replacement funding. So I just need a little bit of clarity on that. And then when you say on page 734 that Flayland is getting a modular there at the current one, is it an extra container for an extension? How is that going to work? And if so, if there's a possibility that we can maybe please look at internet services or partnering with Cape Access. If you've ever been on the Flayland Road, I've lost the tire there, you will know it is very, very rural. If you find a signal in the Vleyland area for your first 3 hours, you are lucky. I mean, Umtaki sells tulips there and he has no capabilities to do business services, and a Cape Access type of or mod space would be wonderful. I mean, there's farming communities there. There's this one female farmer that's busy taking over a farm, and we had to get agricultural services to drive from Cape Town in order to come do training with them in Laingsburg, because there's simply no internet access, and the agricultural department in the town simply didn't have the capacity to service every particular community. I mean, you have to drive 3 to 4 hours simply to go do an online application with a youth, and sometimes you have to bring the application back to the town and simply to get signal in that area. So it's a very big problem, and something like this could really help bring the people of Vleyland closer to where the services in the town area is. And then just with the EPWPs, I just want to make sure I got my ducks in a row with the numbers. So last year, the EPWP conditional grant that we get from National, we implemented 560 EPWP last year at various places such as museums and library. This year, because on page 696, because of the 27.36% cut on that page that we're now getting, we are losing 76 in total in terms of EPWP people. That's also across, you mentioned archives, library spaces, and so on. But in terms of that, we're absorbing the funding for the losses you mentioned. So now my question is, where's the funding coming from? Is it coming from the Provincial Revenue Fund? Has extra equitable share been assigned? Who's absorbing the loss? Which unit had to be like, okay, we need to make a plan to pay for this? Because the money doesn't just grow on trees, despite money actually being made from paper. Thank you. Those are my only follow-ups.
I've just noted Member Bartman asked quite a few follow-ups. So what we'll do is, if you can answer that, then we'll go to the next one and answer and go to the next one.
Thank you, HOD. Okay, so I've got, I think, 3 questions. The first one on the Comm and the other facilities that museums have incorporated or also looking to incorporate. So many of the affiliate museums already incorporate other fund raising or revenue generating activities like renting out of boardrooms. Some will have little curio shops, even coffee shops. That type of thing. But we are encouraging them to look at further avenues for revenue generation. Just what adds to the context is that each museum has its own governing body, and especially when you get to province-aided and local museums, these governing bodies, they're an entity in themselves. And so it is a process, a change management process that we undergo with them. When we first started talking about the Comm and the multi-use facility concept, you can imagine that, you know, staunch museologists and staunch librarians, they didn't receive the concept very well. And so that is where we emphasize it has to be this bottom-up approach. So we basically going with the approach to them and say, this is something that the department is seriously looking at. These are the potential benefits. And we're asking them as partners to come on board and to come up with proposals of how these multi-facility, multi-use facilities can be managed. So they come up with, you know, this is how the museum and the library can function together. This is how we can reorganize the space. This is how we can renovate, etc. Then the second question on the museum exhibitions. So affiliated museums have a declared theme, and the permanent exhibition would center around that specifically declared theme. However, the department does encourage museums to be more socially inclusive and to expand its themes and to broaden its themes to represent, you know, the broader community. As part of that, the department does assist these museums with revitalizing exhibitions. You will see in our APP. There's a lot of work being done currently on Worcester and Dias Museum. Other ways that we augment the experience for visitors is also through traveling exhibitions, temporary exhibitions, and educational programs at these museums. A lot of these activities, though, are very budget heavy. And so the other ways that we're looking at that is through partnerships, through universities to help with the research, etc. The third question on the provincial heritage sites, who is responsible to maintain it? Ultimately, once a site is declared a provincial heritage site, it doesn't change ownership. So the owner of the site still remains responsible for maintaining it. In terms of community expectations, that is where HWC can play a much bigger role in educating communities on what can be expected when sites are declared provincial heritage sites. And that is one of the roles that the entity must play. And if I can put a plug in there, and that's why HWC has been so vocal for local authorities to take over the management of Grade 3 heritage resources so that we can allocate the necessary resources to heritage education, heritage promotion in our communities, especially when it comes to resources of provincial significance. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Member Bartman, I just want to clarify the funding issue. So Ms. van Wyk explained the approach towards the arts and culture, which is not social sector. So social sector is the grant that's being allocated to the sport component. And this is merely supplementing what we are already allocating. So we use the funding within the MOT space, basically. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then, of course, we do on the arts and culture side, we also get additional funding from Provincial Treasury to the tune of almost about 12 million, which is then allocated between arts, culture, libraries, and archives. Thank you. And perhaps just in terms of the 4 million, so we received last year, we received 1.5 million for the Beaufort West Burnt Library, but it was for to replace the furniture and to replace the books within the libraries. This financial year, we got an additional 4 million, which according to the Provincial Treasury is intended for the same purpose. So it's merely making sure that we are able to operationalize the library once the building or once it has been rebuilt. Thank you.
Cover the rest. Just to clarify, the Burnt Library is not a public library. It's a head office and a store, what did you call it? A hub from which we distribute our books to the various public libraries. Celia can cover that up.
Flayland, we're very excited. We are going to add the internet connection there. So the plan is when they move out of the hall into the modular, which is more space, bigger shelves, and then it will provide internet access to that community.
Thank you very much. Member Kasim.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the sports with regards to the response in terms of sports. On page 682, the department speaks about building safe and cohesive communities or social cohesion, if that is a term used. However, we still have townships in the province where colored and black people live, and there are no sporting facilities catering for the different sporting codes like one would find in suburbs or other areas. So I'd like to ask, or rather know, why is this so? And then what is the department doing to rectify the issue? Because one cannot be said to be building a cohesive society, but the social disparities remain. And then with that, this question also applies to sporting facilities in townships and the rural schools, which are predominantly attended by African and colored learners. What is the department doing to work with the Department of Education and Infrastructure as well to make sure that there are proper sporting facilities in these schools? And then the last one is also with regards to abandoned sporting facilities and vandalized sporting facilities. Do you have an indication of how many abandoned and vandalized sporting facilities are across the province? And then it's just as one example, in Ward 92 Mitchell's Plain, there's a beautiful facility there. The gym equipment is still there. It looks brand new. These pool tables that is gathering dust. What is happening there currently? Because I see that it has been abandoned and not in use for a very long time now. Thank you.
Chair, Dr. Bauer will cover the bulk. So structured development for sports facilities is the constitutional mandate of municipalities, even though we do offer support to the smaller municipalities to upgrade their infrastructure. The work that we do is mostly trying to see how we can activate those sites once they've been built and make sure that they are utilized. So I'd like Dr. Bowe just to cover a little bit about that, and also how we've partnered with the Department of Education to develop the shared facilities in schools and how that is working so far. Thank you.
Thank you, HD and Member Kashim, for the question. So Schedule 5A and B of the Constitution sets out the mandates that needs to be followed. In terms of the municipalities, it is facilities, and they also have what they call recreation. In terms of the provincial government, we work with provincial sport federations, and that's where we come in. However, we do have a role when it comes to the facilities. So what we would do is, when a municipality is going to build any facility, then we would send out somebody to work on the same committee with the municipality to ensure that the norms and standards are met. So in other words, if they're going to build a soccer field, then the soccer field would have to be 90 by 110 to make sure that they can play 3rd division, 2nd division, or 1st division matches, because each one of them would have a different requirement. Sometimes the lighting would determine whether you can actually broadcast a 1st division or 2nd division match. Whether you go to Hartley Vale with a hockey, you would need to have a certain type of light in order to play at night and so forth. So our department then assists in terms of the norms and standards of a particular sport facility. However, as the HOD has pointed out, it is the incumbent upon the local municipalities to actually ensure that their facilities are in use. What we do is we partner with municipalities to ensure that the activities that we run can be done at the facilities as well. We have a meeting with the City of Cape Town coming up in the next 2 weeks, Member Kashim, so I will certainly raise the issue. I'm meeting with the Parks and Recreation section of the City of Cape Town. So Mr. Tutu and I will ask him about Mitchell's Plain, and we do not keep the question that you had about how many facilities are abandoned and vandalized. We would not, as a province, keep those statistics, because that would be the municipalities that would keep that. What we normally tell the sport federations is that where they have a need, they need to go to the IDP hearings and table their needs at that particular meeting, because if they don't table it there, it cannot go into the budget, and then it cannot, then the municipality will not apply for those aspects. However, what we do is, as I said, the small amount of money is what we then augment some of the things. But nowadays, even a netball court could be 400,000 to 500,000 rand, depending what you use. AstroTurf is anything from 3 to 5 million, depending if it's water-based, non-water-based, and all of those aspects. But the facilities are in the domain of the municipalities, and then the sport facilities at schools. We've had, in the last few years, discussions with the Department of Education, and what we've agreed with them is to build what we call multi-purpose facilities, one per district. So we've started off at Lavender Hill. We've got a shared facility that is a world-class facility that has a huge hall that would be able to stage international events. And we've got a softball pitch there as well in Beaufort West. We also have at Bashir Hanses School. We've got AstroTurf there, the only one in that particular town. And then as we go through, we also have at Heatherlands. So all these facilities are built with the education funding, but we manage them on education's behalf. So we would have our mod coaches there, we would have facility managers, and we would then, if we go to Malmesbury, just as you go through the town on the left-hand side, we have a facility there that is also utilized, where there's tennis, where there's athletics track and so forth. And in each of the districts, we are then identifying these areas. So that is then our relationship, that all the schools in that particular area will have access to the shared facility. We would have joint committees with the neighboring schools so that everybody with a booking system can then use that. It is very, very difficult to build sport facilities at every school because of the cost involved. Many of the schools don't even have halls because they first need a hall just for the children to be able to gather. So from our side, we've now partnered with him. So we are In fact, we're meeting on Tuesday with the DDG, Mr. Meyer, where we're finalizing the norms and standards and what the cost would be for outside federations or clubs to use after the schools have used them during the school day on that side. But that is how we are looking at facilities, and it is one of the first strategic enablers of the National Sport and Recreation Plan, which has an active and winning nation as its two core principles. But in order to get there, you'd need to have facilities as one of the first things, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do anything else if the community doesn't have facilities to go to. But we are in those discussions with education. We believe if the shared facilities model is successful, then it could be rolled out to more districts as well. Thank you.
Chair, we didn't respond to your question around libraries with coffee shops and stuff. And when you asked that question, I felt like you were a fly on the wall in our discussions at UCT. We are currently engaged in very exciting discussions to try and look at alternate models for libraries, to reimagine libraries as community art centers, because in a library is books. Books are literature. Books are a creative enterprise. And it cannot just be limited just to the education side of it. It's about imagination, it's about creativity, and other creative endeavors need to live within a library space. And then Michael alluded to the MAL hubs, where we are putting together a library, a museum, as well as an archive service. And that will then have those ancillary creature comforts, such as coffee shops, etc. That is where we are going. We want art galleries in libraries. We've got the small example of the Desmond Tutu Library in Swellendam, where as you enter, the community arts are up on the walls, visual arts, and community is able to sell their artworks in the art gallery. Then there's a space, a general assistance room, which is currently being used for other purposes at the moment after the fire in Swellendam. But it's a room where theatre can happen in, however small theatre happens anyway. And then outside, of course, there are opportunities to engage in outside activities in that library. So that is the direction we are going, where we consolidate all of these offerings and make sure that the libraries are community art centers and not just places to lend books. But I don't know if Cecilia would like to add on the UCT engagements.
HOD, you said it all so well. Don't have much to add. We are working with UCT Design School. We're in the process where they're facilitating working groups in our Comm, and we hope that the process for this new service delivery model will be done by the end of June 2024.
Member Harris?
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me share my appreciation for the report tabled by the department and the subsequent responses raised. However, under budget decisions, the department has indicated 22 unfunded posts. However, it doesn't provide us with adequate details around of where are the categories per se of those posts, and what is the number as well as the details of the funded posts that were left basically vacant between the years of 2019 and 2023. And what was the savings that you could generate out of that? And how can we ensure that we reinvest the savings for the current shortfall as highlighted in your report as well? On priority 2, Chair, on page 677, economic transformation and job creation, the department's coordination responsibility around provincial youth programs. We would like to know what are these youth norms and standards? And if so, can you provide us with details on those norms and standards, as well as how much was allocated for it in terms of the budget? Secondly, Chair, as we are all aware that the youth in our province are met with a plethora of challenges, in particular the mental health issue that was raised, and how that relates to substance abuse and also the heightened manner of it within our society in general, and what is being done about it, because the committee chair last year made a statement to the public that it has spent millions to get the youth out of drugs and crime. And one would like to know how much of this budget is used to mitigate the substance disorder amongst our youth, and in what indicator is the department ensuring it will be measuring the impact thereof. On priority 3, education, skills and health, and it was mentioned about the library aspects. We would like to know the new libraries plan, is it still going ahead? And what is the current progress made on that in terms of the moratorium that was placed on building of new libraries, Chair? And what is the number of libraries for the year under review, which is current? Secondly, as well, Chair, the challenges that we are facing with our illiteracy of grade 4 learners, we would say, who can't read and write for meaning and understanding. We would like to also have an understanding at how is the department dealing with that to ensure that we have the literacy level required for grade 4 learners to be able to comprehend when they read as well. On the issue on priority 5, that speaks to spatial integration with the focus on rural libraries, we would like to know what is the number of rural libraries that is still without connectivity, and how many will be connected during the year under review, as well as the cost implication of having that done. So that is where I will pause for now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Marais, can we take your question as well?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I will try and be as brief as possible. My focus is more on the youth. And what I've heard is that every time come and they talk about how many cycle races there were, and they do so many tours to the Western Cape, and how many arts festivals there were. What's that got to do with our delinquent youth, unemployed youth? What is that cycling tours? How does it benefit the restless youths in Manenberg, Guguleto, Kailicha, Bishop Lavis, Delft? What are we talking about here? What about these layabouts youth with nothing to do to occupy themselves? Where will they get a cycle to take part in a cycling tour? We haven't even made a provision for them to have a small soccer field in Bishop Lavis, in Noordgedag, in Delft, in Morningstar, here in Vincentecraal. They will never see a cycle tour or go to a festival. All they want is a soccer ball, a small field which has been properly structured. I've been begging for this since I came here in 2019. I said when I was still 1974, 1980s, I had a soccer field in Noordgedag. It was fenced with Vibercrete, and the children, I started a soccer union for them. What happened? It's now squatter camp, and they haven't even done anything about it. There's no soccer field. I'm asking and pleading. I went to Delft. I checked with the youth. They said there's nowhere for them to play soccer. Nothing. The open spaces is now dumping grounds. People dump their dirt there and building material there. So when you do talk to municipalities in terms of oversight, or as a partner and assist them, and you determine norms and standards for facilities to be built, what are you telling them? Are you telling them we're going to have another netball festival? Or our children can never even practice netball for the world tournament because they don't have netball fields in the colored townships. So what I'm saying is if we are managing on behalf of other departments like education and local government departments in terms of youth development, what are you telling them? Is there this cooperative governance that says, listen, we need this and that and that? In nooit gedag, I want to tell this committee, there were facilities created by the Metro Council, but because of political difference between the DA councillor and the people that belong to the Freedom Front there, they locked up all the poles, soccer poles and netball poles into a room there, and they don't want the youth to make use of it. And it's been a big factor. These are the issues we got to address, not the big issues. Get down to ground level. Go there where the people need it, and let's get out of just concentrating on festivals. It's fine for tourism, but it's disastrous for youth development.
Thank you very much, Member Murray. I'll now hand over to the HOD and the department.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ms. Bull will cover the youth norms and standards and all the youth-related questions, as well as the prior three education, skills and health. Cecilia will cover those questions, as well as the rural library and connectivity-related questions. Dr. Bow will cover the events. He'll also cover the sports infrastructure in communities, especially talk a little bit about the netball infrastructure, Lyndon. And I just want to talk a little bit before they speak about events. So there are many events that we have in this province at various levels, from lower level events where we are emphasizing mass participation, so that those who are wanting to explore a career, whether it's in the arts or within sport, have the opportunity to participate and be exposed to scouts and other people who will take them to the elite levels. All of those levels need to exist in that continuum. The larger events are important platforms, not just for tourism and economic growth, but for economic opportunities for the artists themselves. The artists earn by playing. That's how they earn. Live performances are the biggest earners, not recorded music. So the more platforms you have for artists to be able to earn a living, the better. And the larger the platforms, the better. We've got the Jazz Festival coming back now in May. We've got the Jazz Festival out in Prince Albert. All of those are very fundamental platforms that artists need. Artists need to earn a living. So there are smaller events that happen at community level, where artists who are still honing their skills have platforms to participate in. And then there's the larger events, and all of them are critically important along the cultural and creative industries value chain. The same applies on the sports side. The elite events, I mean, if you look at the Cape Town Cycle Tour, at close to 30,000 cyclists, over 1,000 young cyclists who had just been brought into cycling, youngsters were able to participate. People who had never owned a bicycle before participated in this year's, over 1,000. And those are going to continue to use a bicycle in their life for health reasons, for simple things of going from point A to point B, but also you could have another Nicholas Lamini emerge out of those young cyclists. Nicholas Lamini coming from here in Western Cape, who participated in the Tour de France. So all of those opportunities are being made available. It is not just a big event. It is a big event that goes beyond creating economic opportunities for the tourism value chains. It's about the participants. The marathons, the same applies. You don't wake up in the morning and run 56 kilometers. For you to run 56 kilometers, you have to practice every day. That means you are being healthy, because you have to run almost every day. And in that way, we are shifting people to move towards healthy lifestyles. So they have a place not just in the economic space, they fundamentally have a place in the sports and in the health space, and how we are able to prevent non-communicable diseases, things like diabetes. People need not progress to diabetes. There's a lot of things that if sports was funded well, would prevent many more people presenting on the health platform. But the budget policy tends to say, focus on the health platform, which is under pressure. And that is right. You must do that. But you must do that and focus on preventative interventions, more people running marathons, more marathons happening, not just a few, and more engagements where there's opportunities for mass participation. So I'll hand over to Dr. Bowen.
Thank you, HD. So I think the first thing for us, perhaps minimum to note, is that we believe in sport, that we creating the opportunities for the youth. Sport and recreation is a very important sector, but we have many role players. And in this sector, we have the sport federations. And I want to just use the example of the Sport Federation, Western Cape Cycling and Eden Cycling in particular. They've got fantastic programs that they run in the Oudtshoorn, Duiselsdorp area. And many of those cyclists actually participated in the cycle tour in the 42 kilometer this weekend. They came from Bridgeton. The Velokaya came from Khayelitsha, and we also had cyclists from Masiphumelele as well as from Langa. So over 1,000 of those youngsters actually participated in the cycle tour, but before they could get there, they needed to participate in the others to qualify to get in that regard. There's also local football associations in Visantekraal and in Nooitgedacht in the Matheusfontein area. So football is being played in those particular areas as well. Now, we, through our club development program, we make funding available to over 200 clubs in the Western Cape in all districts. We also fund 35 leagues across the Western Cape. And these leagues are very important because the leagues, we believe, build social cohesion, because it allows those youngsters to participate within their age groups, or alternatively over 19 or over 21 in the seniors, where they then participate. So the festivals is just one aspect of a culmination, but the most important thing that we believe, Chair, is actually that the youth must be given the opportunities to participate in the leagues and the events that happen. The festivals is just one small part of that as well. In the last 3 years, our department has built 54 new netball courts. So we built or upgraded 54 new netball courts as one of the legacies of the Netball World Cup. So depending on the area that Member Marais speaks about, we do have netball courts in all areas. Netball is one of the stronger codes in the Western Cape, and in fact is played in all communities. And netball tends to have courts also at schools where they play, but in terms of their league, they have a norms and standards that there must be 3 courts available at a particular area. But Minister Marais recently opened up in Hartenbosch. We also went to Beaufort West, we went to Laingsburg, we went to Stellenbosch. There were netball courts that we opened, multi-purpose centers in all of these areas. So I think a good legacy of the Netball World Cup was the 54 new opportunities that arose. And then we also want to just, in terms of our club development program, we provide those clubs with attire. We also provide them with equipment and also give them funding towards transport to participate in the league. In the Western Cape, clubs are still very strong, and we believe clubs are the building block of federations. So if you go to an area like Boland, Boland Rugby has 108 affiliates. So they are mostly farm clubs, and we support some of them that are on the club development program as well. So from our side, Chair, we believe that the department is contributing to social cohesion by also ensuring that those federations have youth programs. So many federations have got a youth component. And then if we look at somebody like Jaden Rhodes, who comes from Atlantis, He now plays at a very young age for Cape Town Spurs, but he was identified because he played in the Atlantis LFA. And many of those youngsters are identified early on. If you look at Damien Willemse that comes from the Strand, he would not have been as good as he was if he didn't play rugby for his club at the early age and also for his school in the Paarl areas. So there are many, many other examples that we can mention of people that have come through, youth people in particular, that have come through to go on to senior level as well. Thanks, Chair. I stop at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, Jaden Rhodes came through our programs as well. He participated in the 2019 team that we took to Gauteng to compete schools. And he now plays for Cape Town City, is the correct team. He plays for Cape Town City, and soon you will hear him being called up to play for Bafana. But he's doing very well, and he's very young. I think he's just 20 years old at the moment. So there's a lot of results coming through with youngsters that have come through our programs. I'd like Jackie to do the youth, then Cecilia will do the libraries, and then CFO will end off with the posts.
Thanks very much, HOD, and thanks for the questions. So first of all, on the norms and standards, we can share the norms and standards document. That was a document that was developed by all the youth representatives from the different departments, and it is setting provincial-wide norms and standards. The assessment that was done last year was funded by Provincial Treasury. It cost a total of 436,000 Rand. And what it did was to assess 14 of the major youth programs where the big money is being spent across all the departments against the norms and standards. It identified 2 programs as best practice programs. That was Year Beyond and Chrysalis. And then the other 12 programs that identified areas for improvement. Maybe the theory of change wasn't clear, or maybe the trauma-informed approach wasn't clear, and it identified all of those and made recommendations. Those were then shared with the program managers and Provincial Treasury, and this year has been a year of programs trying to work on those areas identified for improvement, and then there's going to be a relook at it again for next year. So that's in terms of the youth norms and standards. It also made some recommendations around what different programs were doing that was best practice, and the youth forum has been getting different programs to present their best practice as a way of leveraging and sharing experiences. So that was in relation to the first question. The next question was really just around, like, what are the indicators? And if I can talk about that at 3 different levels. So I think for the unemployed youth, the indicators are that they go from being neat to being economically active. So while they're on whatever programs, it's a stepping stone to making sure they step out of the pool of needs into economic activity. And so that's the measure that's being used across all the youth programs. And one of the recommendations coming out of the norms and standards research was standardization of indicators across all the different programs. In terms of the learners participating in the programs, obviously there are different indicators for every program. So there might be sport indicators or academic indicators or whatever. But there are some transversal ones that cut across everything that are good indicators of the levels of engagement of young people. One of those is around school attendance. So what we know is that by participating in all these different programs, it pushes up school attendance. So that's one of the indicators we look at, is, are young people attending the programs regularly and consistently? And that means they're at school regularly and consistently. So that means that we're giving them something to go to school for, even if it's only the after school activity. So that's one of the big indicators. And then for each of the different programs, there are specific indicators that are measured. So for example, in the literacy and numeracy program, they do a baseline test and an endline test. And then we also measure the impact on the systemics of those in the program versus those not in the program. You know, on the one with behavioral challenges, a teacher survey is done and teachers report back on the change in behavior in the learners, because they refer the learners as problem, in inverted commas, learners, and then they report back, and we do an annual survey of all the educators in relation to that. In relation to the libraries program, we are trying to get young people to read 100 books every single year. And so they get a license, like a little passport, and they get a stamp every time they read a book. And we're trying to get them up to 100 books, because we know that if young people read 1,000 books before the age of 10, they are more likely to read for meaning. And so we're working on that goal. So every program has slightly different indicators, but all of them have a beneficiary component, and there are some transversal ones. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. So just with regards to the freezing of the 22 posts, Member Harris. So just some context firstly, so the 22 posts had to be frozen as a result of the fiscal consolidation and the fact that we needed to absorb the cost of the salary increases, which was not funded by Provincial Treasury. So the categories of the 22 we had, I'm just going to give high level. I've got a list which we can provide afterwards, but 5 was within program 1, which is administration. We had 10 posts frozen in program 2, which is cultural affairs. 3 posts in program 3, which is library and archive services, and 4 posts in program 4, which is sport and recreation. Then just with regards to the savings that was realized in the past because of the vacancies that occurred. So savings, unfortunately, we cannot utilize. We have to give it back to Provincial Treasury. They made a rule about that, I think about 5 years ago, before we could. So we could reallocate COE savings to programs in the past, but not anymore for the past 5 years. Like I'm saying, it has to be returned to Provincial Treasury. And then, so therefore, so you mentioned something about the possibility of investing some of those savings. So we not able to do that. And also Provincial Treasury is the one that does investments on behalf of the province. So even departments, even if we do have savings, we can't go and invest. Provincial Treasury does that as a collective for the province. Thank you.
Thank you. I will start with a question on the expansion, the moratorium on the expansion of public libraries. That is correct. Currently, our grants are quite stagnant. There's very small increases, only in inflationary increases. So because of that, the municipalities and ourselves cannot afford to employ new staff members. So when you build a new library, you need new staff members, so that adds to the cost of employment. It adds to the maintenance cost of electricity and maintaining the building. So we did put a moratorium on the building of brand new library points where there are no libraries. However, that does not mean we're not expanding our service. So currently, our focus of infrastructure is on places like Vleyland, where there's not really a library. It's wheelie wagons in a church hall that we want to create modular libraries for. But we're also working with partners, looking at depot libraries, which is then where they assist and they give funding for a space, they give funding for staff, and then we only provide the books and the internet. So at the moment, there's in De Novo, in Stellenbosch, we're looking at such a depot, which will not add to our COE bill. We're looking in Breda Valley. We've been approached by, let me just get my email back where that was. In Breda Valley, the Association of Persons with Disabilities has approached us and said they would like us to open a depot, which would be for them as well as for the public. So we are expanding our services. We're just not building new libraries because we cannot carry the cost of the COE. With regards to literacy interventions, on top of what Jackie mentioned, is we do have one of our indicators you'll see in the APP is the number of literacy interventions, and it's close to 7,000 a quarter, which is storybook hours, which is reading programs with our children. So the public libraries, with the assistance of the Yeboneers, do give a lot of literacy interventions in the public libraries. With regards to the rural libraries not connected, at the beginning of the year, we had 43 libraries not connected. We were looking at this year, we connected Molsvlei Public Library in Matikama, Versveld Public Library in Bergrivier, and Waltevrede Public Library in Swellendam. So that brought it down to 40. This year coming, we're looking at Vleyland Then we're looking at Wagenmakersvallei Public Library in Drakenstein and Witzenvallei Public Library in Witzenberg. As the space and the infrastructure improves, that's how we can expand our rural library connectivity project. On page 707 of our budget, you will see the broadband budget. So that 9 million, 9.229 million for 2024, that is to maintain our current rural library connectivity project. So it's refreshing PCs that are older than 5 years, and it's also implementing the new workstations at the new places that we will be opening up. I hope that answers all the questions.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Gooch, I hope that the APP is also considered one of those 100 books that they have to read for the year. Colleagues, with that, if I could ask you to hold your other questions and just note them. We were due to take a break at 10 o'clock when the caterers have been ready since 10 o'clock. It is now 10:50. So I'd ask that we please be back in the chambers at 11:05. So that's a 15-minute comfort break, and there's some refreshments as well. We'll come back and then we'll do the next round. Before we left for tea, I saw Member Pretorius. So we will go with Member Pretorius. Can I get an indication if there are any other hands for the next round? Member Pretorius, you may go.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if I may I make a quick comment on what HOD Redmond said before the break, and that specific reference to the very, very valid point of the link between health and sport, etc. And in yesterday's vote on health and wellness, the Minister, Noma French Mbombo, made the point repeatedly about the era that we are in terms of socio-economical, political, and you can also add sport to that, and that there has to be a synergy in that. The HOD also mentioned that Health recently conducted a survey in an area in the metro, which he didn't mention, but that one of the findings was, and this is why I'm raising this, is that in that specific finding, 41% of the households were undernourished. 41%. You cannot go to school. You cannot participate in sport if you are not nutritionally fit for it. And I'm so pleased to hear that this province is working together with other departments, with social development and with all the other departments to make this happen. There's just one item still missing. And to me, that is the greatest common denominator. That is transport. And I'm specifically referring to the rural areas because post-matric, people are lost. They are the forgotten people, because they don't have access to transport as they have had when they were still at school and being bused to and from school, etc., etc. Just a comment. Thank you for that, Chair. Chair, I just have one more question, and that is on page 697, and it's actually it's quite interesting to me, even humorous. Departmental receipts, and you refer there to revenue relates to provincial gym membership fees. What is that? I'm sorry if I laugh about that, but how do you get, where do you have provincial gym memberships that bring money into you? And then, and then just below that on donor funding, also in yesterday's vote, we learned that from a variety of outside or private sources, funding, although not voted, that funding is made available to the Department of Health. Is there something similar available to DCAS? Is it something, if not, is it something that you would consider pursuing? Because I believe that there is a lot of money around, not only in South Africa, specifically internationally. And I think for the product that you offer to the public of this province, I think there must be funding available abroad if you were so to make use of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. While we wait for the other members to raise their hands, I must say it's an oversight on my part, Minister and HOD. I have not yet organized an oversight visit to the provincial gym downstairs. My assumption was that members would see the gym on the left-hand side as they walk in. But I think if we do come back next year, we need to make it compulsory for all members of this committee to take out a gym membership as well.
Chair, it's actually is the main source of revenue.
So in June, we'll make sure that there's provincial gym memberships for everybody. Members, can I get an indication if there are any other hands for that round of questions? I see we've lost Member Marais and Member Barnes. I think Member Marais is probably having the most delicious scones, knowing his wife. He's got an entire spread. But while we wait, I'll hand over to the HOD and the department.
Thank you very much, Chair. The gym question, I think, CFO, you'll cover that one. Maybe with the help of Mr. Tutu. The route of alternate sources of funding is one that we've are moving very fast towards, and has been basically the success story of our after-school program. I'm going to speak to Jackie just to talk to us about all the various partners, because it's other partners are partners that we fund in the ecosystem. Others bring their own funding, and others offer services in kind. And all of that contributes to that holistic program that we have in the after-school program. And we are wanting to do the same for the mod. And Danielle will talk about what opportunities have emerged there. There's some partners that she's brought online. And also with Michael, has got a partnership with Hisense, contributing to a new museum at the SACN in Gester. So we've made that shift, and there's no other way. I think we have to crowd in as many other sources of funding as possible. But I'd just like my colleagues to elaborate. So we'll start with what did I say we're starting with? Jackie.
Thanks very much. So I think what's very important is that if we look at what's happening in the after school space, there is 3 different things that happen. So schools have programs that they run. Then there are NGO programs that are funded and run by various different NGOs working in different communities, either at school or at the NGO premises. But then what we've managed to do is to leverage both of those with our broader after-school network, where with a little bit of support, we are able to expand what NGOs or schools are already doing. And I think that that's very important, because if you think about it, in every middle-class school, children can stay at school all afternoon and do sport or art or whatever they want, but it's that missing element in many of our no-fee schools. So what we do is we provide the stipend for young people to assist with that program. It gives them work experience, and it gives extra capacity to our partners. And then they can use their funding to, instead of running a program at one school, to run it now at 2 or 3 schools. So it's about how we leverage the available funding in order to be able to expand the footprint across multiple, different sites. And I think that that's very important. So we currently have, in the Western Cape, we have just under 40 NGO partners that we work with that run programs like this. And all of them have been able to expand quite significantly through the assistance of a stipend for young people. And then they're able to expand their offering that they already had funding to be able to go to more schools. We also know that there is the Social Employment Fund, and one of our partners, the Learning Trust, has been able to do something very similar. So between the 2 programs, Year Beyond and the Social Employment Fund through the Learning Trust, it means that we've seen big expansion in after-school programs run by NGOs. We don't count all of that because because we don't hold all of that data, but we are seeing more and more schools with active after-school programs. And then Danielle builds on that with the mod stuff. So I'll hand over to her to build on that. So obviously nationally, there's a big focus on youth. And so we access funding through the National Youth Service from the NYDA, which supplements the funding that DCAS has, which has enabled us, instead of only providing opportunities to 2,000 youth, to do 3,500 youth last year. So that's really, it's matched funding from national. And then in addition to that, because the outcome we want is not that young people do something for a year, that's a stepping stone to a bigger outcome. And the bigger outcome is we want young people not to be neets anymore and to become economically active. We've partnered with Harambee, who's got some private funding, and we've introduced an impact financing mechanism. It's like an impact bond. So all our NGO partners, if the young people who have finished the program, so you do the program for 1 year, if you finish the program and in a year later, those young people are still economically active, Harambee will pay the NGO 5,000 Rand per young person that is still active. So it's a funding stream to our partners to keep them supporting young people once they've exited the program to stay economically active. So on the program, we build their work readiness skills and we build their competencies. Then we have a pathway offer that helps to secure their next opportunity. But we know that very often young people land in that opportunity and then, things don't go according to plan or they hit an obstacle. Now we're incentivizing the NGOs to support them during that term, which means that young people are now going to be active for 24 months, which improves their chances of never being a NEET again. And so that's really what it is. Thanks.
Thanks, HOD. Just to build on what Jackie's shared, we have a partnership with an NGO, for example, Waves for Change, and they've managed to secure funding from Anglo American. With that money, we'll be training our coaches in mental health awareness, so how to identify the signs of when children need mental health support. So that's training, mental health focused, and the partnerships with an NGO, and then private sector being Anglo American. From civil society also to colleges, we have partnerships with Northlink and Chrysalis, where you have students who are completing sports administration programs and they need to do an internship and a practical, and we offer them that opportunity to be hosted within our programs. Currently, specifically from the private sector, we're in discussions with MTN and ShopRite, so looking at supporting our programs either with a feeding program or coming in with events and prizes from MTN. So the donor funding is normally accessed through the NGOs that we partner with, but we'd be very keen to explore further donor funding to expand the footprints of our programs, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the gym forms an integral part of the Western Cape wellness space. And we have been, in fact, at pains, Chair, to extend the footprint of the gym to communities, because sometimes we inundated with requests for community gyms to partner with our gym, and the members of the gym are then sent to those communities to empower them. And also the gym has been an integral part of the mental wellness. We send our personal trainers to go and do wellness programs there at the start of the workshops or conferences. And lastly, from us, from the gym, we are looking at relocating the gym to a bigger space because it's got a very small space, so that it can be able to accommodate you when you come. Thank you, Chair.
There's so much to say. Remember, you're absolutely right. It's minuscule. So we're looking at tariffs. So the highest tariff, as an example, is 400 Rand for 1 year. So that is the high end. Then we have lower tariffs where we are able to accommodate like our interns. Very small amount, but also to provide them with access to the gym. So the revenue is in fact very small. It's very little, but unfortunately we are not a revenue generating department. So therefore, in our case, our main revenue streams are the little bit of gym membership fees and a little bit of museum entrance fees that we receive, and then the fines and penalties on lost library books. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I got very nervous when I looked up and I saw Member Syed sitting there, and I thought, oh, Member Syed is posing as a member of the public. So I'm glad he's taken up his seat as a member, so that he doesn't take up that slot for the members of the public. HOD, if you do need more space for the gym, there is also a gym on the 7th floor in this building that nobody uses. So please do put the cardio room upstairs. I'm sure the speaker would like that, so you can send people there as well. I've got a question with regards to specialized libraries. Do we have any specialized libraries in the province? So I know the City of Cape Town has attached to the Cape Town Central Library. They've got an arts library that's sort of enclosed. And then also the Wynberg Library acts as a music library as part of it. And then is there scope for Ms. Van Wyk and Masani to collaborate to create a library of theatre plays, specifically in Cape Town, where we keep a record of theatre plays? And then I wanted to ask if there are any conversations in the next, I should not say the next 3 years, but probably the next 5 to 10 years, to talk about the expansion of the archives and bidding for money from the Provincial Treasury to seriously consider getting that project up and running again, because as we know, we've run out of space. And the more we talk here, the more content we generate that has to be archived. So that's my 2 questions. I think I saw Member Harris. Were you raising your hand?
Yes, Chairperson, if I'm allowed to. On page 682 on the MTSF priority, sentence 5, around the heritage of the Two Rivers Park, or tussen die riviere. What we would like to find out is that how far are the developments within that area, especially as it pertains to protecting the heritage thereof, right? Given the fact that we wouldn't want to see that not attended to, because it's something that we hold very dear in terms of a particular grouping within society. So I don't know if the department are able to provide us a feedback on that project and processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other hands in the chambers or online? I don't see any. I'll hand over to the HOD and the department.
Thank you very much, Chair. Cecilia will cover the specialized libraries, and Nomazo will cover the archives, and feel free to cover the recent advances you've had from Provincial Treasury, even if they have not materialized into anything, but just cover that part, and also cover the preventative interventions that we're doing by protecting those archive material in situ. And then the last one, Michael will cover the HWC and tussen die riviere.
Thank you for that question. Yes, we don't have specialized libraries. We do have libraries with specialized collections, though. I know in the city, the Central Library also has a big drama and theatre section. I don't know how the collection is with regards to plays, but one can certainly look at which library is best placed and look at building up such a collection within a library to have a special collection of theatre plays. But we don't, all our public libraries none of them are specialized as such, but they do have specialized collections in certain areas. But I can look at the theatre plays.
Thank you. With regards to the physical space in the archives, we have been requesting funding from Treasury. We did that also with the last MTech engagements, which were in January, 22nd of January 2024. In the meeting, there was a request from our side to indicate the figure of the funding that we are requesting. What we then did, we requested the updated costing from the Department of Infrastructure, and then we provided that to Provincial Treasury. At the time that the discussion and the funding was already provided for the archives, which was in 2019, first there was an indication that the building that was going to be built was going to have the basement, three basement floors, and then the other floors that are sort of like similar to what we have at the moment. However, just in January 2019, when the plan was already signed, there was an indication that there was a 35 million cut, then we had to reduce the scope. So in the revised scope, it was just going to be now from the floor up without the basement floors. So the funding, the figures that we have, so will reflect the two. The first proposal, which was the original scope, is now estimated at 328 million. It's 328,719,289. That includes VAT and professional fees. And the reduced scope is 280,002,379. And that also includes the professional fees and VAT. In terms of the progress at the time, everything was done up to a point of even heritage. There was a heritage impact assessment that was done because of the wall that we have, which is a heritage wall. The process was just about to go for tender. That is when the project was put on hold indefinitely. So we've had now this recent provision of the updated funding, the costs that is needed, but yeah, we haven't had any further indication as to when we can be able to be assisted. Thank you.
Can I just ask, just for clarity, so the plan that is approved is for the reduced scope? That's the one we're going forward with?
Yes, there was both. Okay, the first plan was signed, but then later on, after it was signed, in Department of Transport and Public Works indicated that they had a 35 million cut. Then we had to sign a revised plan. However, Treasury requested us to also look at the original scope when we provide the figure to them, because the discussion is that when the provision is made, it must cover us maybe for a period of maybe 30 to 40 years going forward, so that we don't have to go back again, let's say now after 10 years requesting more funding, so that the building can be able to accommodate the current backlog and what is being created as we go along, up until we also have a cutoff point where we are saying, because on one hand, we are also pushing the process of electronic records, so which is either digitized records and born digital records, so that those born digital records don't get printed to create more a challenge for us in terms of space. So we are looking at that. So they said, no, let's go back to original and provide both figures. Then, yeah, we're just waiting.
Because what is 48 million in the greater scheme of things? Only 48 million. But we do have the chair of the budget committee here as well. So we will ask those questions in the budget committee for the next 5 years.
Thank you, HOD. In terms of the Two Rivers urban park area, it's a very significant area for the department and for the Western Cape. We've been working with the National Department of Sports, Arts and Culture and also with the National Heritage Council. We've identified that area specifically as one area within the Resistance Liberation Heritage Route. In 2021, the department completed a feasibility study on the area. Just for context, I mean, it's a 300-hectare large site. And the feasibility study proposed various interventions to commemorate Khoi and San heritage, especially in the green areas. We have subsequently presented that to the NHC, which have provided the funding for the feasibility study. And in the past year, they have asked us to break that down into a project proposal. We've sent 2 project proposals, a short-term and a longer-term one, specifically looking at, you know, the areas of ownership. So some of the areas belong to the City of Cape Town and some of the areas belong to the province. In the short term, we have proposed interventions for the areas belonging to province, like Oudtshoorn and so on. And it consists of QR codes and reflective benches where people can access the heritage of the site. And we've sent that to the National Heritage Council. If that is approved and the funding is provided, we are looking at rolling that out in 2024, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Murray.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I want a bit of clarity, Chairperson, because this is a Department of Culture affairs as well, but now they use culture in a different context, Chairman. They talk about on page 686, building a culture of responsible government, building a culture of reading. What is this culture you want to build? They don't use culture as pertaining to a group of people, a particular culture, not a culture of learning, a particular culture. Did this committee ever acquaint themselves with various books written about the Griqua as a nation and cultural group recognized by UNESCO as indigenous? Did they read those books? Are they in our libraries? The one is the Griqua is nog, met die Griqua se vlag, rooi, groen, wit en blauw. Nog 'n boek, Griqua Culture and Superstitions. Weet u die committee daarvan die boek? Het julle dit gelees? Is dit in die biblioteke? Forgotten but not buried. Nog 'n boek oor die Griqua met foto's van ons heel eerste leiers van Adam Kop, Waterboer, Lefleurs reg deur tot die hede toe. Ek het nou gegaan in die biblioteek, ek sien nie die boeke daar nie. So, dan was daar hofsaake gewees oor die traditional leaders in culture bill wat in die Griqua se guns beklink is in ons howe. Ek het nie nou tyd om dit alles te verduidelik nie. Die hof het uitsprake gegee in die guns van die Griquas. Ook die erkenning van ons tradisionele leiers. Nou, weet die breinkind, hy is nie 'n kleurling nie. He's not a colored. He is the children of the Griqua, the Nama, the Korana, which is a mixed race because of European blood mixing with the Khoi people of South Africa. What I don't want to hear about, we instill a culture of learning. I want to say the cultural group Griqua of Nama or Korana should be recognized as a group worthy of A, B, C, D, and they fall under ILO 169, which prevent discrimination against them in the job market. That's what I want to hear. Department of Culture. I don't hear them speaking about the traditional people's cultures. And I want to know why not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands. I'll hand over to the Minister and the HOD.
Thank you, Chairperson. Dankie. Ek wil graag net vir agbare Marie antwoord op die Griekwa is nog. Die Griekwa het nog se boek is geskryf ons departement in samewerking met die Stichting vir Magtiging deur Afrikaans. En as u op die Stichting vir Magtiging deur Afrikaans se website kyk, is daar verskeie boeke wat geskryf is in samewerking met ons oor die Griekwa as wel as ons vroeë leefwyse van ons mense. So baie dankie.
Dankie Minister. Ook die innovation and culture space. Just to explain the context on page 686. We are not talking about culture in the sense of culture as a cultural practice, but we are talking about culture as in organizational culture there, just to explain why we are building a culture of responsive government, building a culture of reading. It's not the same context, but Minister has covered us on the support to cultural organizations, traditional leaders. We also have the Cultural Commission, which offers support to various traditional communities for them to be able to conduct cultural practices, conferences, etc. And also in terms of recognition, of course, the process is currently underway now to deal with official recognition of various communities within the Khoi and the San communities under the auspices of the Commission on Khoisan Matters, and we are all eagerly awaiting their work. I'm aware that today, Minister, and today and tomorrow, the Commission is meeting with various communities to further elaborate on processes that are currently underway and just share more information with communities on the road to recognition. And that process is being led by the Commission and through the National Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, and within this government being led by Department of Local Government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Marais. Is that a follow-up question?
Thank you, sir, for indulging me. Yes, it is a follow-up question. I don't see in the budget, you have had so many meetings with the Griqua communities and others, where in the budget that it shows. Show me money allocated for this or that, which directly focuses on the Griqua or Nama or whoever. Where in your budget do you allocate money for the upliftment of the Griqua people? Where? We talk about them. Show me where money is allocated for them to have an office or to have facilities or infrastructure where they can meet to discuss their various cultural events. Where does it show in your budget?
Thank you very much. HOD?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. We have the Cultural Commission, and is budget allocated in the Cultural Commission for all cultural organizations and cultural communities. We have within our budget funds allocated for cultural practices generally. We have the Department of Local Government, which has created a new sub-program for traditional and Khoisan matters. This was created last year, and preliminary budgets have been allocated in that budget in anticipation of the recognition of traditional and Khoisan leaders within the, I think, next year, March. So there are budgets that have been allocated in anticipation of the recognition of traditional and Khoisan leaders. And within the Cultural Commission, there are budgets allocated, and within the department itself, it's hard to say, here's a budget for Griqua, here's a budget for Amakposa, here's, you know, we have budget for cultural practices, and some of the budget is then made available to the Cultural Commission, which has about 35 cultural councils registered of various cultural organizations and groupings that are funded through the Cultural Commission. Thank you.
Chairman, if you will indulge me, please.
Please
There's only 3 groups that UNESCO and the United Nations accepted as indigenous to the Cape. Only 3. Don't talk to me about all the other cultural groups. There's only 3. That's a Griqua, that's a Khoi, that's a San. They are protected by ILO 9169. They are the 3 that they say are First Nation and indigenous to the Cape. So don't group them amongst all the other cultures and say that we have got cultural councils. I want to know, what did your department do to protect the indigenous people recognized by the United Nations as indigenous to the Cape?
I think, Member Murray, that question has been sort of asked and answered, but what we will do as well, we will, in our recommendations, if you'd like any further information, we can make sure that that gets provided in writing. There are quite a lot of activities that take place across the province, different festivals, and I'm just thinking of some of the ones that I've attended, that we can also share, and I'm not sure if it's departmental supported, but the Nama Dance Festival, for instance, the preservation of the Ngu language, etc. So we can make all of that available to you in writing as well. Member Bartman?
Hey, just a suggestion. When I was still chair of economic development, we went and did oversight to the Katu Sun Centre in the Western Cape because the Department of Economic Development and Tourism post-COVID gave them funding in order to renew and reinvigorate their respective museum as well as the respective restaurant in order to take more of the people of the community in and train them for the hospitality and tourism center. And after that, the tourism actually increased and the income they increased for the particular community. And there is a parliamentary report on that oversight. I'm not sure if the member was on that oversight. I remember there being an economic and social cluster week during that particular week, but that is something that we can source from WCBP as well.
Perfect. That 80-seat report can be found on the WCPP website as well. Members, I'm now going to just double check with Mr. Matthews if there are any members of the public who have indicated whether they'd like to pose a question or make a comment. I don't see any members of the public in the chambers, but do we have anybody online?
Thank you, Chairperson. There's no indication or request for submission.
We are not as popular as the Bella Bull, so we can't get that many people at a public hearing. I'm now then going to hand over to the HOD and the Minister for your closing remarks. And then just to remind the Minister, the HOD, and the members of the department that lunch will be served in the members' dining room at 12:30. So you're either welcome to stay and work here, or you can walk back from the DCAS offices to eat the lunch that has been provided. Wasim says you might want to go to the gym before lunch and then come back since we share the building. So I'll hand over to the HOD and to the Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Eerstens wil ek net baie dankie sê vir die staande komitee. Want in hierdie afgelope 5 jaar wat die termyn is, het ons regtig waar ek wil sê meningsvolle oorste gehad van julle. En dit is altyd wonderlik dat ons dit weet, dat ons op ons tone gehou word. En dan wil ek vir die departement sê baie dankie. Ons gaan nie afskeid neem nie, ons sê net baie dankie vir hierdie 5 jaar. En ek sien nie almal weer die 27ste Maart vir ons budget speech. En ek wil sê ons het verrassings vir julle. Baie dankie.
I also want to echo the Minister's thanks. I must say, when I took over the chairmanship of this committee, I didn't know, I didn't quite fully comprehend the work of the committee, even though I was a member. But as a chair, you really get to see in depth the impact of the work of the department, but also the work of its entities. And I want to thank the Minister and the HOD for also inviting the committee over the last 5 years to some of those practical things so that members can see, whether it's the Provincial Sports Awards or the Cultural Affairs Awards, they can see how the work of this committee is also appreciated, the work of this department is also appreciated by the sectors. It is two of the most joyous occasions on our calendar to be able to go to the Provincial Sports Awards and to be able to go to the Cultural Affairs Awards and actually see the recipients, because we don't often see that. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for always being available, whether it's via WhatsApp or via email, and always providing us with a lot more information. And sometimes this is the one department, when you ask one question, they give you a very comprehensive answer. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time this morning. You are all welcome to stay behind while we do our deliberations, or you can get into your gym gear and enjoy the 400 Rand gym. And please remember to join us at lunch. Members, we're just going to give the Minister and the officials an opportunity to leave, and then we'll move into the second part of our meeting. Colleagues, may I ask if there are any meeting resolutions that you'd like to propose, or any requests for additional information, or any recommendations that you'd like to make?
Sir, from my side, I would support this budget. It's a good budget. I just want to say that if we can agree on a resolution that a greater emphasis and focus must be placed on the upliftment of the Griqua, Khoi and San communities, which has been declared indigenous to the Cape and given First Nation status in terms of socio-economic development. That's all.
Sorry. Member Partman?
I'm just trying to take cognizance of the time as members that we have left of this particular term and whether or not we'll be able to do oversight over the respective recommendation. Would it be possible perhaps in order for us as members for the last 2 or 3 months still to maybe get a report first on what Member Marie is asking, so that if the new members of the committee then want to then schedule oversights or want to do briefings on it, then at the very least, they already have all the programs across the government that support the respective requests or information that is available. I'm just wary of us not being able to get to the things we want to get to.
Member Marie, are you happy with us amending your recommendation to ask the department to provide us with the detailed information on what is currently being done in the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sports to support those 3 groups as you mentioned, and that report can then be used as the basis for the next recommendation, which would then be, once we've seen what they've done, then we can say we want sort of you to put greater emphasis on doing A, B, C, D. Would you be happy with that?
Chair, yes, out of respect for Member Bartman, and she always make valuable contributions, and so do you. I will support that.
Thank you very much, Member Murray. So that would be the 3 indigenous groups in the Western Cape as recognized by UNESCO. So just remind me of the groups, Member Murray. The Griqua, the Nama, and the Member Murray. Are you able to just list the groups again?
Khoisan, Nama, and Griqua.
Khoisan, Nama, and Griqua. Okay, there we go. So we've got that recommendation. Are there any other recommendations or requests for information? Okay. Members, can we also resolve that we include these in the minutes of our meeting rather than in the report? It's just a lot cleaner that way. And then I'm not sure how productive Wasim has been. I know he's been Googling the whole time. So I think he wanted to see how much space there is because he didn't want to visit the gym. But Wasim, do we have a draft report? So members will also just flight a draft report. So then the report then will read the committee report of the Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sports. Oh, sorry, my screen just jumped. Report of the Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sport on Vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sports, in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 of 2024, dated 13 March, as follows: that the Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sport, having considered Vote 13, Cultural Affairs and Sport, in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 2024, referred to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it either supports or does not support the vote. Member Bartman?
Thank you, Chair. I move that we support the vote.
I second it, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that's moved by Member Bartman and seconded by Member Murray. Member Kasim?
Sorry, Chair, we can just put for the record that the EFF does not support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Kasim. So we'll just put the minority view in there. So then the report will read then the report of the Standing Committee. Member Harris?
Thank you, Chairperson. I think we need to also note our view as the minority, as the ANC, that we are not supporting the budget vote.
So the report of the Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sport on Vote 13, Cultural Affairs and and Sport in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 2024, dated 13 March 2024, reads as follows. The Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sports, having considered vote 13 Cultural Affairs and Sports in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 of 2024, referred to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote in accordance with Standing Rule 90. The Economic Freedom Fighters and the African National Congress has expressed its minority view not to support the vote. Member Bartman?
I move to support the report.
Thank you very much.
Just a
Member.
point I want to clarify with you. If you make a point of saying who don't support the bill, I think it's just fair to say that the Freedom Front supported it. Why highlight them and not us?
We're only highlighting the minority view because we have to do so in terms of Rule 90. But in the minutes of our meeting, it will reflect that Member Peter Murray from the, I was about to say from the Economic Freedom Front, Economic Freedom Fighters, but from the Freedom Front Plus, supported the vote. So it won't say it in this report, but we'll say it in the minutes. But we don't put the members who voted for the vote in the committee report.
No, I understand that, Chair. I understand it. I've been long enough in Parliament. I'm just saying as a rule, we should revisit that. Because people, generations from now, will ask, who supported it then? And they wouldn't know who supported it because you only mention those who don't.
No, you seconded it, so it will be in the minutes, but that is definitely a conversation we can have in the Rules Committee as well. When we look at the rules, it's something that we can amend so that we put that in the Rules Committee as well. Members, the report is thus adopted. I am now going to ask Wasim just to put the minutes of our previous meeting on the screen as well. And that was it was a meeting on the 29th of November. And it was also an appropriation vote. I want to see if you can just go up to the attendance very quickly. There we go. So we're now just tabling page 1. That's the attendance. And page 2 deals with the discussion on the adjustment budget. And then the tabling. And then that's the last page, and we adjourned at 10:33. Member Bartman?
Chair, I move to support the minutes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, second.
Thank you very much. So that is then moved by Member Bartman and seconded by Member Pretorius, who were both present. So the minutes is thus adopted. Members, just noting that this is our last meeting as well before we go into the budget debate. With your indulgence, can we also resolve that you give the chairperson the authority to sign off the minutes and the report in terms of Standing Rule 82.4? Because otherwise we're going to go into a perpetual cycle of having to have a meeting to adopt minutes and then having to have another meeting to adopt the minutes of that meeting to have another meeting to adopt the minutes. So what we will then do is we will send the minutes via email, via round robin, and if there's any glaring omissions or corrections, members can just let me know. And then once we've passed that deadline, I will sign it off. And the same with the report as well, that I'll just sign off to make sure that that report gets ATC'd. Is that in order?
Yes, I move.
Perfect. Thank you very much. On behalf of myself and Wasim, I want to say thank you to all of you for the work over the last 2.5 years. I think unless something urgent and important comes up, this will be our last ordinary committee meeting. We will obviously see each other in the chambers for the big battle of the budget in a few weeks' time. And we'll see each other on the campaign trail, and hopefully some of us will come back if we are granted that opportunity. So on behalf of the two of us and Ms. Burgess, thank you very much for your cooperation. It has been a lot of fun being on this committee, and I think we've had a few membership changes, but we're probably one of the nicest committees in Parliament because we never fight. And also Wasim and Mary Ann, thank you very much to the two of you as well for always making sure that the train runs on its tracks. And I can also say this committee, well, our procedural officer leads innovation within his team, because we've outsourced Wasim to so many other committees when they have to select or interview candidates, because he's able to come up with scoring matrix. So thank you very much, Wasim, for that innovation. If I think back to my first meeting, before it was police oversight, it was just community safety and cultural affairs and sports. It was in committee room 2. And it was very different members from all of us, but there was banging on the tables at the time by the former minister and member Christians. So I'm glad we've never had any more banging since then. So thank you very much. As I said earlier, lunch is being served at 12:30. So please make sure that you enjoy the lunch and that you invite your political staff as well. Member Bartman?
Chair, I hope I'm not overstepping, but from the committee side, we just want to also thank you for being chair of the committee. I think when I joined this particular committee, it was a completely new type of perspective on how money gets implemented and how budgets get spent. And one of my most favorite oversights were when you took us to the archives to show us where those figures, where those key items and line items in the budget get spent. And I know that as I know in the corridors, as we say, or the streets of Parliament, the particular committee is combined with 2 departments. So it's always that balance of trying to make sure you get to community safety and to cultural affairs and sport. And we have to be honest with ourselves. In many, many previous years, before we were even necessarily here, cultural affairs and sport didn't necessarily get all of the attention it deserved. And I think under your leadership, that has changed, that cultural affairs and sport really is now getting the attention it deserves as a department that assists with preventative measures across departments in our government. And for that, we thank you.
Thank you very much. My favorite oversight visit was to Robben Island. Just saying. Member Murray?
Yes, I also want to echo the kind words of the Honourable Member Bartman. I want to thank this committee. I met through my term, the second, this is my 100th term. I thought of once of leaving Parliament, and I was disgusted by what's going on in this house, in Parliament, but not this committee, never. I have learned that the committees really set a pace and a standard that a person can compliment the chairs and those who partook in it. I see that we find each other much better in a committee than we find ourselves in a house, across party lines. And I want to thank every member of this committee and the chairman. I don't think I'll come back again to Parliament. I've been here for a very long time. I've been in this house since 1992, not 1994. Then we were still the Cape Province, not the Western Cape, and I was then MEC for the Cape Province, not Western Cape. So I had a long stint in this house, and bring back fond memories to see the chamber and the blue seats and everything. It was quite nice, and I enjoyed most of the people in this house, their contributions, and it was of a good standard. And I want to say thank you to all, and adios. If we don't see each other again after May 29, I want to say, wish you luck. I wish you luck. You're a good team. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Marais. Member, our meeting is thus adjourned. See you all at lunch.
you.